way, but on every mineral deal that this president has been unleashing. So we're opening up mines all across this country. We're also pursuing energy and mineral deals all over the world. Since the president issued his executive order also on deregulating coal, we've seen dramatic coal production increases already in the United States. So we're taking advantage of the trillions of dollars in coal wealth and mineral wealth that exists in the United States. We're a very mineral-rich country. But with respect to that deal, we'll move it and operationalize it as fast as we possibly can. But it's meant to pay back the United States, this is the key point, for the hundreds of billions of dollars that our taxpayers have spent subsidizing the war in Ukraine. So it is repayment to the United States, and that's one of the most important points to understand about it.
What's the leverage? Does it give? What kind of leverage does it give?
The president's goal, again, is to end the killing, to achieve a peace settlement. That remains, of course, the overriding objective.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
This administration has stressed the need for price transparency for things like healthcare bills and concert tickets. So why is it a political and hostile act for Amazon to display price transparency on consumer goods?
Well, I think it's the wrong way of looking at it, which is why would, first of all, that proposal is gone now, but why would Amazon, of all the different things that go into a theoretical price input, right? For example, does Amazon list the cost of California's regulations on everything made in California? Anything you make in California, you have a massive price increase because of the healthcare regulations that are unworkable in that state, because of the labor regulations that are unworkable in that state, because of the subsidies that go to illegal aliens in that state, because of all the bureaucracy. So anything being produced in California has a massive built-in price hike. So why wouldn't Amazon have a list saying if you purchase it in California instead of in Alabama, this is the premium that you pay? That you pay. This was a clear attempt by whoever proposed it originally, I don't know, because Amazon says they were never going to do it, to try to undermine our trade negotiations with China. I'll make another important point on this, which is that there's been many complaints about the fact that there are a lot of products that are sold on Amazon that are actually rip-offs of American products that are then stolen by China, and then they take our IP and they put them into products to try to undersell our manufacturer. So to the extent that we are engaged in labeling issues on Amazon, I would say that would be the most significant one to fix, is making sure we're not undercutting American consumers.
And then one on Abrego Garcia, please. The administration is reportedly inquiring about his return. Is that to check a box for compliance, or does President Trump want him back on U.S. soil, or both?
So, as Secretary Rubio said yesterday in the cabinet meeting, this administration is not going to publicly discuss the inside details of our foreign policy and negotiations with a foreign country. And in particular, we are not going to allow a district court judge to try to become the Secretary of State. Secretary Rubio is the one who, under his leadership and direction at the State Department, is managing the day-to-day relationship with El Salvador. Let's just take a moment, number one, to express our gratitude to El Salvador for agreeing to take some of the most dangerous terrorists off of America's streets and to put them into a safe environment where they cannot continue to engage in acts of terrorism or coordination with the Maduro regime. You may have seen recently an FBI assessment that was unclassified that said that the Maduro regime is using and planning to use Trinidad terrorists to carry out assassination plots on American soil. Now, very few in this room covered that. I'll let you all ask yourselves why you didn't cover it and why your editors didn't assign that story to you. Something I think you should think about on your own. But this is a earth-shattering piece of news. The Biden administration imported a terrorist army that our own FBI assesses is planning assassination strikes on American soil against critics of the Maduro regime. Those are the terrorists that President Trump is finding and apprehending that our Democrat judges and Democrat activists are trying to keep on U.S. soil. Tren de Aragua has the same legal status as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. MS-13 has the same legal status as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. These are foreign terrorists operating on our soil. And our gratitude to El Salvador for agreeing to take custody of these terrorists is immense. With respect to the case that you mentioned, there's now even been more evidence that has been made public of this person's violent, repeated threats and assaults against his spouse, someone who had repeated, documented human trafficking and human smuggling offenses, somebody that has extensively documented membership in MS-13, a terrorist organization, and of course he had MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. This is a person that was a clear and present danger to the safety of the American people. And it is a sad reflection on the state of our media and many of the outlets represented in this room that you obsessively try to shill for this MS-13 terrorist. Well, no coverage occurred in your papers about any of the Americans that were raped and tortured and murdered by the illegals that Biden was importing into our country. You know, you talk about due process. The Biden administration made the decision to give extensive due process to 2 Tren de Aragua terrorists that were apprehended at the border just a couple years ago. They were 2 gentlemen. They were from Venezuela. They were members of Tren de Aragua. The Biden administration and Border Patrol apprehended them and made the decision to provide them with extensive due process, put them onto a program known as supervised release, and put them on ankle monitors so that they could go through a lengthy legal, judicial determination as to whether these legal aliens who had just set foot on U.S. soil might want to live in the United States for the rest of their lives. What was the result of that decision? What was the result of that choice that was made? Those 2 men kidnapped a young girl named Jocelyn Ungary from her family. They beat her, they sexually assaulted her, they tortured her, they stripped her, they murdered her, and they dumped her body. That is what the Biden administration's policy was. Most of your papers never covered her story when it happened. To the extent that you covered it at all, it was because President Trump forced you to cover it by highlighting it repeatedly over and over again. He had to shame you into covering it. And each and every one of you that sides over and over again with these MS-13 terrorists, to the extent that you have the financial means to do so, you all choose to live in condos or homes or houses as far away from these kinds of gangbangers as you possibly can. If I offered any one of you a rent-free home with no taxes to pay in any of these gang neighborhoods, and I said your neighbors are MS-13 terrorists or Mexican mafia or Sinaloa cartel or Tren de Aragua, I couldn't pay you to live there. But yet you, with your coverage, are trying to force innocent Americans to have these people as their neighbors, and that one day their daughter may be abducted from their home and raped and murdered. So you're not going to get an ounce of sympathy from this administration or President Trump for the terrorists who've invaded our homes and our country.
Awesome. Thank you. Peter, we'll take a couple more questions.
A couple questions on DOGE, of course, because that's the topic that you're here to speak about. But I want to ask you one other question about the topic of prices. We heard from the president on this just yesterday, right now, on prices and the risk that there could be some short-term, as he said, shortages. He was referring specifically to dolls. What do you tell Americans right now, Stephen, who say they can't afford to, in the president's words, be patient? Americans who voted for President Trump on his promise that he would lower prices across the board on day 1.
But he did lower prices across the board on day 1.
Well, grocery prices last month went up 0.4%, of course. So I mean, just across the board, not exclusively
right.
eggs.
Inflation, as you would acknowledge, is down substantially. Gas prices are down substantially. The new GDP report showed a 22% record increase in investment in the United States of America. So all of the, and don't even, egg prices, of course, which was all you guys talked about for a few days, I think are down like 80%. The reality is that we can either surrender economically to China, or we can reclaim and reshore our manufacturing base and our industrial needs. And it's not just China. In the event of any national emergency, this is the president's first duty as commander-in-chief. In the event of any national emergency, we cannot be reliant on foreign countries for steel, aluminum, energy, technology, any of the essential components that we need to keep this country running. He is fulfilling his duty as commander-in-chief that every president before him had failed to fulfill or even actively betrayed. And despite inheriting all of this, as I mentioned, inflation down, jobs up, and particularly, by the way, jobs for American workers. So for the first time, you look at these jobs reports, the government workers are going down, which artificially, of course, increased previous job totals. The employment of non-citizens is going down. The employment of American citizens is exploding. Remember, all the job gains during the Biden administration, so-called gains, on net were for foreign workers. So if you look at the stock of American workers over his whole administration, they lost jobs on net. So if you're an American worker, you lived through 4 years of a Biden depression. That was the economic reality that now that President Trump is rescuing. And again, if you make your product in America, there's no tariff. And as we develop advanced manufacturing techniques, increased AI, increased robotics, it'll be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to manufacture in America.
But to be clear, you said that prices have gone down across the board. The president himself acknowledged that on toys you may end up paying, on dolls he was referring to, you may end up paying a little bit more right now. So in terms of
He was making the point that I think almost every American consumer agrees with. If they had a choice between and I'm a parent of young children, you had a choice between a doll from China that might have, say, lead paint in it, that is not as well constructed as a doll made in America that has a higher environmental and regulatory standard and that is made to a higher degree of quality. And those two products are both on Amazon, that yes, you probably would be willing to pay more for a better made American product. But here's the key point. With the tax cuts, the regulation cuts, the energy price decrease, and everything else that President Trump is doing to unleash this era of American prosperity and prevent the road we were on to get off that road of financial ruin and doom, means that it will be cheaper than ever to make and manufacture in America. I think that answers your question.
So I'm going to
Do one more.
Stephen, can I just... Can I ask the Doge question? Can I ask about
There's
Doge?
so much interest this morning. Peter, we just gave you 2 questions.
I was
Brian,
asked
go
about
ahead.
Doge, but I'll wait. That's okay.
Last night, Kamala Harris delivered her first major speech after losing the election. She attacked Trump personally, attacked the policies. Any comment from the White House on that?
Well, I think it was a great reminder to the American people of just how blessed we all are that the leader sitting in the Oval Office today is President Donald Trump and not President Kamala Harris. It was a helpful reminder of just what a travesty and a tragedy that would have been. It would have been the end of America. And it gives me a chance to bring this whole thing home. If we continued on this road of radical regulation, choking off American energy, sending our supply chains to foreign countries, taxing our economy to death, pushing this cancerous woke ideology on our children, ending merit, ending scientific innovation, ending public safety, allowing, everyone goes to the stores these days, everything's locked up, criminals roam free, law-abiding citizens under the previous administration were punished while gangbangers were given red carpet treatment. Democrats, of course, are still giving gangbangers red carpet treatment. And then the border invasion. If those policies had continued, it would have been the end of the American Republic. And the only thing Americans want to hear from Kamala Harris is an apology for joining Joe Biden, and remember, she was the border czar, joining Joe Biden in aiding and abetting the invasion of our country. And we're never going to stop talking about this, because what they did to this country is unforgivable. It is an eternal stain on the Democrat Party. Every day we read another story. Every day we arrest another alien they let into this country who raped a child, who beat a woman within an inch of her life, who murdered a mom, who murdered a dad, who trafficked drugs into this country, who trafficked fentanyl into this country, who are responsible for dead and slaughtered Americans. And I don't know what's broken in the Washington press corps, that none of that moves them emotionally. The only thing that gets them exercised is, do we need to have more trials for terrorist supporters? Do we need to have more trials for gangbangers? Do we need to have more trials for illegal alien invaders? Even though Congress and the Constitution clearly say that you can expel invaders and illegal aliens quickly, efficiently, and properly. This president has literally saved America, and I could not be prouder. I could not be prouder, as I know Caroline feels the same way, to come every single day to this building where we have a leader sitting in office whose first, last, and every thought is the safety, prosperity, security, and sovereignty of the citizens. That's an important word, people. Citizens of this republic. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone. And just to add on the Kamala Harris point, I think I speak for everyone at the White House. We encourage Kamala Harris to continue going out and do speaking engagements. You'll hear from the president at 11 o'clock. See you guys later.
A report the president's planning to fire Mike Waltz. You guys have a response?
Why haven't you nominated a single judge?